Well, hello friends, good morning. Welcome back to my kitchen. This is just going to be a brief video. I wanted to just show you one of the problems you can have when you're canning. When you don't follow the rules, like I got kind of sloppy with my technique. I neglected to follow the rule about making sure that you have your jars preheated and your water preheated when you're putting a hot liquid into them. I had this chicken broth. It's a beautiful, nice broth, and I had brought it back up to boiling so that I could can it. But unfortunately for me, I neglected to preheat my jars, and the water that I used was room temperature. So I put my boiling hot broth, it was actually boiling, into jars that I just warmed a little bit. I used the kitchen sink, hot water, and kind of warmed them up a little. They were warm to touch, but they weren't nice and hot. And the water that I put them into in my canner was room temperature, so it was about 75 degrees. And lo and behold, when I was taking out my jars, I picked up this jar, I heard a crack, and whoosh, all the contents left. And you can see here, that is a thermal shock break. I've never had that happen to me before, and I'm pretty lucky, I guess, that this is the only time it's happened to me. It only happened to this jar. The other 3 jars were fine, luckily for me. And so, as you see, let me set this jar down here. All the broth went into my canning water here. This happened last night, and it's cool. Everything's cool now, but I can actually just pick this up with my hand. But here's the bottom of the jar. And when you have like a circular break like this, that's very typical of a thermal shock break. Now, in addition to being cautious about making sure your water is preheated and your jars are warmed, you also want to make sure that you don't screw your lids on too tightly. That's another thing that can cause your jar to possibly break. But the pattern of this break leads me to believe it's a thermal shock break. But you can also get broken jars from screwing your lid on too tight. The instructions for screwing the lids on are to just have them fingertip tight, which means just as tight as you can screw them on with your hand lightly. So snug but not tight. And I want to just test this real quickly and see how. I've got to put my camera down for just a minute. I want to see how tightly I screwed this jar lid on, and I want to see if maybe that was a factor. And no, that was not a factor. This lid was not screwed on tightly. So this is definitely thermal shock.
I mean, those things just happen.
And my husband also reminded me it's possible that I could have had a crack in my jar previously that I just didn't notice. And that's a possibility too. But I think in this case, my issue was thermal shock. Also, another thing you want to be careful about is when you do remove your hot jars, you want to put them on a nice padded surface that will prevent any sudden temperature shock to the jars, because that can also be another factor why they could crack when they're already on your countertop. So I like to use these nice padded dish towels. You can use regular towels, you can use a cutting board, anything that kind of provides a buffer so that the heat change is not going to be extreme to your jars and you don't get any thermal shock issues. Now, another factor associated with temperature change in canning is when you make sudden changes in temperature during the canning process, you can have funneling or siphoning of the contents out of the jars. I did not have that problem, as you can see. I had no siphoning, I had no sudden temperature changes during the canning process. That can happen when you have quick changes. For instance, if you turn your canner off and you don't allow it to cool down naturally over a period of time, or you uncover it and take the jars out immediately, the sudden temperature change can cause the contents to over bubble inside and siphon out. But that did not happen in this case. So that's just another factor to keep in mind when you're canning. But in my particular situation for my broken jar, sudden temperature changes during the canning process didn't seem to be a factor. It was the thermal shock of not preparing the jars properly when I was initially filling them to prepare them to go into the canner, and also not having the canner preheated. So just a quick video to show you. You don't want to have all your beautiful hard work and your lovely broth go into the canning pot. Like I said, luckily for me, I did get 3 beautiful jars of broth. This is lovely broth that I simmered for a couple of days, actually. I just was so busy. We had a Christmas party and I was running over to my mom's every day. So at least I did get 3 beautiful pints of broth out of this canning session. If you're interested in seeing how I make my broth and can it, I'll put a link to a couple of my videos in the description box below. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope my experience will help prevent you from having any problem with broken jars. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you all again next time. Bye-bye.